Hello and welcome to an episode of The Bike Show where we take a look at the rapid rise in development of the Fired Up dealership, where it started and how it has now morphed into a partnership with the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world. And we find out what the latest news is with Honda, who are on something of a roll at the moment with the excellent performance and value combination offered by their two new 750cc parallel twins, the Adventure Transalp and the Naked Hornet. That's all to come later in the programme though, because we're going to kick off with some international news, including some recently announced new models and a few rumoured models that seem almost certain to happen in the near future. What is noticeable is that most of this roundup concerns the latest developments at the major European manufacturers, with a huge amount, rumoured and confirmed, happening at KTM. But since we spent the whole of last week concentrating on the Austrian brand's 890 SMT, we'll leave the orange bikes until the end of this report. Instead, we'll begin, briefly, by heading west to the UK, where significant progress has been made in the project to launch a completely new range of motocross and eventually enduro models at Triumph. This is a huge undertaking for a manufacturer that is undoubtedly one of the outstanding industrial success stories of the past 40 years. Brought back to life in 1983 with the acquisition of the brand, the first modern mass-produced road bike was available in 1991. Since then, the company has built itself a reputation as a major player in the industry with competitive and often class-leading models in most segments of the market. Triumph also supplies a version of its 765cc triple as the engine for the Moto2 class of Grand Prix racing. Launching a motocross machine designed to immediately compete for victories at the highest levels of the sport is a simply massive undertaking. But their track record, the roster of world-class engineers and riders employed to develop the bike, and the details that have been released so far suggest a launch later this year and the first development racing to take place in 2024. We've so far been shown some chassis and engine details, and Triumph is due to release its final video telling the story of the project's development on September the 5th. And when that happens, we'll absorb all the info and condense it down into a more palatably sized chunk for you to digest. Hell of a brave story though. Before moving on from Triumph, I think it's just worth mentioning that it seems that the Tiger 1200 is another bike that will follow the lead set by Harley-Davidson's Pan America, with its automatically lowered preload on the rear shock that reduces the seat height as you come to a halt. A very useful function on a tall adventure bike for those of us without extended inside leg measurements. The Tiger shock will start shaving off 20 millimeters of height as the bike comes to a stop. It's a feature that will be fitted as standard but needn't be activated if not actually required. Turning it on needs to involve pressing the home button for a second. Heading back east to Italy now, Ducati is busy with what seems to be its new tradition of leading up to the EICMA Expo in Milan with a series of online launches of its new models. There's been nothing too major in terms of announcements as yet, unless you're a committed Ducatisti, and then stuff like the 30th anniversary edition Monster will be of interest, even though it is really nothing much more than a standard Monster with some pretty Italian colours. Erlin suspension, Turbinoni exhaust, forged alley wheels, carbon mudguards, and a plaque showing the number of the limited 500 that you've got. There's also a new Panigale V2. Well, I say new. What I should be saying is there's a new colour option for the V-twin version of the Panigale. Black. Or rather, as Ducati puts it, black on black, which is probably somehow blacker and cooler than just plain old black. In the search for news that involves more than some paint and the odd fresh trinket, we now need to head north and visit Munich, where BMW has been very busy since I last covered the news there. Perhaps unsurprisingly, since this year marks the 100th anniversary of BMW Motorrad. For me, the lead story has got to be the addition of a third model in the M range, with the M1000RR Superbike and M1000R Naked to be joined by a M1000XR. I'm an unashamed fan of the existing 165 horsepower, 114 Newton meters S1000XR and its practical melding of an adventure riding position, touring credentials and the performance of its naked S1000R. So the possibility of this same configuration but with over 200 horsepower from the shift cam version of its inline 4, some winglets for extra downforce and a set of upgraded M-spec brake calipers, I find to be a very enticing proposition indeed. So far, there's been no official launch of the model, so all we have to keep us going is the sight and sound of Isle of Man TT legend Peter Hickman enjoying himself ripping it around the infamous island course. More significantly though, in the grand scheme of things, has been the debut of the next model in the new generation of CE electric mobility, I don't know, scooters or vehicles or whatever BMW wants to call them. I rode the CE04 last year, and although it is undoubtedly very expensive and somewhat limited compared to what a petrol-powered maxi scooter can offer, I still think if you're a well-off city-dwelling commuter, it takes some beating in terms of tech-savvy desirability and modern good looks and ease of use. Now, a year later, BMW has graced us with an even more funky-looking, innovative, electric, scootery type thing called the CE02. BMW says, in an attempt to appeal to the youths, that it is a e-parkourer, a cheesy combination of the modern word used to describe how some athletic young daredevils traverse the urban environment. Maintaining this thick layer of marketing fromage are lots of images of beautiful young people pouting and pretending to be enjoying themselves against a not at all cliched backdrop of a load of graffiti. Look past the uninspiring corporate messaging and you'll find a genuinely interesting and innovative product. I love the skateboard instead of foot pegs approach that actually allows you a range of riding positions on the flat seat and of course gives you the coolest of options for the final few hundred meters to your destination. The top spec CE02 has a theoretical minimum range of 90 kilometers, a max speed for the top spec model of 95 k's an hour, generated by its 15 horsepower and 55 Newton meter powertrain. Aimed at the youths, as I said, but more specifically the extremely niche market of the children of hedge fund managers, because at a retail price of 200,000 rand, or just under 10,000 euros, it's out of reach for any youngster I've ever met. From Munich, we now take a quick blast east along the highway across the Austrian border to Mattighofen and the hometown of KTM, where they are celebrating 10 years of class-leading performance with a serious update for the 390 Duke. Most obviously, you'll notice the chunkier and even more angular looks for what was already a trademark KTM design of angles and straight lines. These things are always very personal, but I have to say it works for me. There's a redesigned trellis frame, a new cast alley subframe, and I'm also chuffed to see that they've gone for the underbelly exhaust, allowing for a tidier rear end. I'm a big fan of this exhaust type of placement, being an MT09 owner, both for the weight distribution and the aesthetics. The engine has now grown from 373cc to 399, and so horsepower is up from its class-beating 42.9 horsepower to 44.2. Although whether this equates to any increase in performance is debatable, given that the weight has also shot up by 15 kilograms to very nearly 165 kilos. More adjustability for the suspension, some upgraded electronics, including the 5-inch TFT screen from the 890 Adventure, result in a new price that will undoubtedly be bumped up from its current level, but no details on that as yet. And since I seem to have run out of time already, I'm just very quickly going to mention the rumoured models due out of Mattighoven in the coming months, with the big news concerning two new increased capacity twins. A 990cc parallel twin that presumably will eventually replace all the 890 models, with the first to receive the updated motor, I think, going to be the 990 Ducati. In theory, that would gradually lead to the range being more logically just consisting of 790 and 990 models. Unfortunately for me, I reckon the last model to get the update will be the just released 890 SMT, a bike that is a reborn version, remember, of the original 990 SMT, and one that I haven't been shy about dreaming of having a bit more top end to go with its booming mid-range. Oh well, just have to wait another year or two. And for those many fans of the Super Duke, it seems that the 1290 is about to become a 1390. Yes, a 1.4 litre V-twin naked sport bike is just too cool. And of course, that engine will then find itself in a new GT or similar, because that's overdue a serious update. And then it will also end up in the adventure bikes, because how could it not, given that BMW's GS is about to grow into a 1300. Wow. 2024 is going to be a bumper year for new models from the German-speaking parts of Europe, and I, for one, can't wait.